write, we want every presentation of the language to be first and foremost motivating and interesting and meaningful for the students, so that they find the language that they're going to study, whether it be present simple or present continuous or verbs of obligation. We want all of those things to be in a context that makes sense and is very meaningful to the students. The approach on the first 2 pages is, first of all, comprehension. They don't have to know about the language or what the language is doing at that point. It's very important to us that the first thing they do is respond to that text in their own personal way, with questions which draw that out. We then focus their attention on the special language that they're going to be studying in that unit, and they find a box called Language Focus, which pulls out some of the sentences from the presentation, and they can then have a look at that language, have a look at it in context, and then they do some work with that language so that we know that that little first contact that they have, they've understood enough of the language to do something with it. So there's an immediate payback for them. They see the language in action and then they do something with it that they can be satisfied with. We call that part of the lesson Your Space, and it's a moment when the students can talk about themselves, can talk about their own experiences, using the language or the topic of that presentation.
After the presentation, we always follow up with 2 pages of language space. Now, in that, it's an opportunity to actually look at the language which was being presented in more detail, and for students really to get their heads around it and actually then begin to use it. We always start with a cartoon where we represent the language, because it sets that language in a very memorable and engaging context. From there, there's a discovery stage in which maybe students complete the speech bubbles with a few words, or they complete sentences. But it means that they look at the language, but they actually do something with it. The key words really for us are understanding and activation. On the understanding side, the tables for the language which is being presented are always absolutely clear, and also very clear examples which exemplify that. What we really want to achieve is for these pages to be a lesson just like any other lesson that they do in the course. So they're full of different types of activities. I mean, variety is a key word. It's listening, speaking, reading activities, with a great emphasis on communication and production. And really, by the end of one of those lessons, the students are really absolutely confident with the language and producing it and personalising it as well.
Language Space also has a box called Get It Right. And Get It Right is part of the philosophy of Cambridge books, because Cambridge has the fantastic bank of language produced by students who are learning English, which comes from the exams, and so we can look at that bank of language and really understand what the most typical errors are of your students. And what the box does is tell them a typical mistake they might make, give them an example and suggest that it would be a good idea not to make that particular mistake. So it draws their attention to these little things that trip them up. And that's another thing which will help your students prepare for their exams.
We also find on these pages the soundbite section, which is the pronunciation syllabus. We kind of like to think of pronunciation exercises as a gym for the mouth. And they're quite fun, but it just gets your students really familiar with the sounds, producing the sounds, and getting them to produce them confidently and beautifully.